Welcome to the first video from Teach Tech Trinity. I'm Lee Holroyd and this is going to focus on the Python fundamentals. We're going to look at the version 3.7.4. When you are doing these videos, if there's a later version, generally that'll be okay. It's just looking at some of the syntax. Some of the syntax might be slightly different. Let's have a look at the release notes and see if any major differences, but the one we're focusing on through the whole of this tutorial set is 3.7.4. This video is going to look at some of the fundamentals of the language, and subsequent videos are going to look at building a text-based adventure game using these skills. So, we're going to focus on maths operators, variables, strings printing to screen, and strings accessing data. And finally, lists. These are some of the main concepts that we're going to use a lot within this video, within this tutorial set. Okay? So, when you download Python, so you could go to Chrome, for instance, and then go to python.org, and this is where you download it from, and then go downloads, and then you've got Python 3.7.4 there. When you go through this process, as well as downloading Python, it'll download something called idle. So idle, which is here when it opens, I've just zoomed in a bit so you can see it. Python works within this shell and it allows us to execute commands. Alongside this, you can build modules. So we can build modules that work together. Okay, so we're going to get to that within the text-based adventure game, but for now, everything is going to be done within this shell. Okay, so maths operators. Let's get started. Maths operators generally work how maths works in real life, as you would expect. So 3.4 is 7. Dead simple. 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 times, so we just use asterisk, is 4 times 5 is 20. And then we do 12 divided by 4 is 3. So we just use a forward slash. So forward slash, asterisk, and then plus and minus. Okay. So they're the 4 basic ones. We also do order of operators, like we would in any maths scenario. If we did 8 plus 2 times by 10. Okay, I'm just going to copy this, can use it again in a sec. 8 plus 2 times 10. If we did that, it'll do 2 times 10 first, and then plus 8 gives us 28. If we did inside this, we'd put that in brackets. It would do 8 plus 2 first this time, and then times it by 10, so it would give us 100. So the order of operators kind of works like that. That just says keyboard interrupt, because I pressed space by mistake. So these are very basic maths things that we're going to look at quite a lot. We could do 18 divided by 4. What this does is it gives us the same as it would do as a normal divide. So if we did normal divide, it would be 18 times 4, it gives us 4.5. But if we did 18 divided by 4, it would just get rid of the point, so it would give us to 1 decimal place. This is very handy when we're doing a lot of the game stuff, because obviously we're working full numbers, we don't work in decimals. We could also do 18 percentage sign 4, and this will do exactly the same as here, but instead of giving us the 4, it would give us the remainder, so it would give us 2, so it would give us 4 sets of this 0.5. Finally, within maths operators, we could do 5 apostrophe 3, and this will do 5 times 5 times 5, so it gives us to the power of. So it do 5 times 5 times 5, and it gives us 125. Okay. So they're the basic maths operators that we're going to use for operations. Next, we'll have a quick look at variables. So you probably used variables before. All variables is a placeholder. Okay. So our placeholder this time is going to be called speed, and we want that to equal 60. So we're telling the PC now, from this point, speed. When we use the word speed, we don't want to use the word speed. We want you to use 60. Okay, so enter. We can now go speed times by 8. So actually what we're doing here, we're doing 60 times by 8, because we know that speed is now equal to 60. So it gives us 480. Okay, we could do a different one. So we could do distance now is equal to 8. So, yep, so that's just like that. Let's move this up slightly so it's not on the bottom of the screen. Okay. So now we could do speed times by distance and using no numbers, that would go as 480 because that uses distance, which we know is 80, which we know 8, and speed, which we know is 60. Okay, so that's what a variable is. Very, very basic, very, very simple. Okay. Strings themselves are going to be used a lot within this programming tutorial set because obviously we're making a text-based adventure game, so we're going to need to look at this, aren't we? Print is a very basic function to print into screen, and open brackets inside double speech marks, but this is double speech marks. Okay, so double speech marks here, close bracket, enter, print it to screen. So this is double speech marks, okay, or markers as I spell it. What this is doing is reading everything between them double speech marks and it's printing it to screen. We could also put print, open brackets, single speech mark, or apostrophe. This is single speech mark. Single speech mark, close brackets. That'll do exactly the same thing. Okay, again, spelling, brilliant, or typing skills more than that. Within this, these are two different ways of doing exactly the same thing. Okay, we use both of them. So, for instance, if we were going to go print, open brackets, and then I don't, single speech mark, it's also used as apostrophe. I don't think this will work, close speech mark. See, I missed one at the start as well. So what this is doing is, it's going between these brackets and it's finding the first one and the second one and it's stopping it there. So it's just going to do this bit. It's not going to do any of this because it's not within the speech marks. So we press enter, we're going to get a syntax error. Okay, that's because obviously it's using the same symbol. We could do inside here, we could do it this way. So we could do it with double speech marks and then I don't think this will work. Or will it? So because it's in double speech marks now and it's not in a single one, it doesn't think that is anything and it works perfectly fine. Okay. We could have a situation where we're going to do print and then inside double speech marks we're going to put this isn't a quote. I like Mondays. Okay, so what we've done here is we've done inside double speech marks, or we think we've done inside double speech marks, inside the last two, we've put a sentence which has got a single speech mark, which is perfectly fine, but we've also added a quote. So obviously we can't do double speech marks because it's got a quote in it, and we can't do single speech marks because it's got an apostrophe in it, okay? So that also won't work. But what we could do is we could put print open brackets, and then inside single speech marks, I don't like this. So again, that's not going to work, is it? Because of this one. But just before we get to that, all we need to do is put a backspace, so a backspace there, and all that says is the next character along, the next symbol, I want it to register it as text. Okay, so rather than registering it as a special character and it doing something, I just want it to register as normal text, and then don't show it to screen either, and then it prints off perfectly like that. Okay, so them three different ways of putting text to screen is important. So double speech marks we can use single speech marks, and then sometimes we need to put a backspace before a special character depending on the sentence we're using. Okay, the other one we could find and we could get a bit of trouble with is file location. So we could go print open brackets, using single speech marks, and then we could go to the lead drive, which is my PC. We could go to the desktop, and then we could go to the folder called Nightmare Street. I don't actually have a folder called Nightmare Street, it's just an example. So this is a bit different because if we were to run this now, it would come up like this. Okay, so the symbol in here, backspace n, means next line. So all it's read it as print, it's read the file location up to desktop here, then it's gone to the next line, and then it started to print that to screen. Okay, so it's a slight issue when we come to print stuff to screen. The way we get around that when we're using file locations is before the single speech mark, if we just put R, the letter R, that means raw text. We want everything after this point to be raw string or raw text. So we do that. if we do that at the end, and then at the end press enter, it will then print the whole of that location to screen. Okay, so we can use single speech marks, double speech marks. We can use a backspace just before the character we don't want to define as a special symbol, or we can put R before it when it's something like a file location, when it's got a range of different ones like this. Okay, obviously in this case, if we were putting a backspace and then a certain character afterwards, we could do it that way. But because it's an N, and N is not a special character, then we have to read it a different way. Okay, there's other ones as well, but this is the basic one. So that's printing strings and printing data to screen. Okay, sometimes we need to access certain parts of that data. So if we just go down a little bit so you can see. If we define a variable called user, and we call this variable Lee Holroyd, me. Okay, so we're going to define the user as Lee Holroyd. So the string Lee Holroyd is now user. So if we go user, it's going to show Lee Holroyd. Okay, we only want certain parts of this data. So if we go user, open square brackets, because it's now a list, and go 0, it's going to show us the first point within that string. So within this set here, it starts on 0, because that's how programming works, 0, 1, 2. So 0 here, it's going to show L, okay? If we want to carry on, so we could go user 5, it's going to show us the 5th one along. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So it's going to show us this data, piece of data here. If you want to start from the other end of the list, we could go user, and then we could go -1. This wouldn't work like the start. It doesn't end on 0. It ends on 1. So this would be -1. Okay. So it should show us D, which it does. We could carry a bit further along down backwards. So we could go user, and then we could put -3, and this will show us from the back 3 places in. So it'll go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 up to there. Okay. We could access different parts of that data incorporated. So we could go user. And then inside square brackets again, we could go square :7. What this will do, it'll go it'll go from slot 2 to slot 7, so 2 just before slot 7. So it'll go 1, 2, and it'll get us that E, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then because it's 7, it stops. So it actually does that bit there. Okay. We could do it from the start of a list, so we could go user. And then inside square brackets, we could start with the colon. This means from the beginning to slot 7. So Lee space HOL. Or we could flip that and we could go user 2 colon and then add no number after it in square brackets. And this will go from slot 2 to the end. Okay. So these are slight different ways of accessing that data. And obviously, if we wanted all of it, we could just put the semicolon itself inside the data. So we could just do that. The colon, sorry, not semicolon. So if we put the colon, it'll go Lee Holroyd and shows the whole thing. We could also measure the length of the string. So we could go length, open brackets, in speech marks, my name, and then close brackets. And then that'll measure the length of my name. So it'll give me 11, okay? So it'll give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So every character. We could measure the length of the variable itself. So we could just be user. And inside that, it'll still give us 11 because we know the user is equal to Lee Holroyd, okay? They're generally the ways of accessing the string that we're going to use as we go along. So we've got some mass variables, mass operators, sorry, that we're going to use quite a lot. We're going to print some stuff to screen quite a lot, which is this bit here. And that's how we're kind of going to do our action choices in our branches as we do the text-based adventure game. We've got ways of accessing certain parts of that text or strings. And then these are generally the symbols that we would use, okay? Finally, we'll have a quick look at proper lists. So it kind of works the same as what we've just done, but it's slightly different. So we could define a list called players, okay? Well, I'm not at the bottom. Players, okay? So we've got a list called players. Inside that, we're going to have some numbers inside square brackets again. So we're going to have the numbers 39, 39, 20, 45, and 53, a random set of numbers, which could mean anything to do with players. So it could be like the numbers, for instance, okay? And then press enter. So we've defined this. Now we want to access just whatever is in slot 2 for players, okay? So we know we've got 39, which is 0, 39, which is 1, and 20, which is 2. So we want to just access this piece of data. So we go players, open brackets, slot 2, and it gives us 20, okay? If we now want to manipulate that piece of data, we could go players again, and inside that put 2, so we're accessing that piece of data, but we now want that to equal 45, okay? So we don't access the data, we want to manipulate it and change that bit, so we're going to go 45. So now, if we run players minus the caps, players 2, exactly the same as before, it's going to give us 45, because we've replaced that piece of data, okay? We could go players, and then we could add to that list. So we could go, obviously players is this set of data, and then we could go plus, a couple of brackets, add some more data, as so. So now we're saying we've got this list, and then we want to add this to it as well. So we press enter, and it gives us our original list, which is 39 to 53, and then we've got our 3 new pieces of data here, okay? This is only temporary though, so if we were to run this again, it would just give us our original list. This can be useful in many different ways later on, that we just need to add certain bits of data for a certain task, and that's it. If we want to amend the data completely, we could go players dot, which means we're going to access that list beforehand. You'll see it like a list of things pop up. This is kind of what idle does to help you, but we're going to use append. And inside the brackets, inside normal brackets, sorry, or curly brackets, we're going to put 120. And all that means is, within inside the players list, I want to add 120 to the end of it. So if we were to run the players call again now, it would give us all of that data. So 39, 39, 45, 45, 53, and 120. Okay, so it's added that little bit of data at the end. We could edit the data in bulk. Obviously, sometimes we don't want to edit all the data individually. Inside that, we could, well, let's just show it to screen first so you can see. Like we did with the string, all this is saying is we want to see players from the start to slot 2. Okay, so we want to see the first 2 pieces of data. Okay, we could use exactly the same as that there, and then inside this, we now want this new piece of data to equal 0 and 0. Okay, so now we want to replace 39 and 39 with 0 and 0, which press enter we do. So if we run players again just to see, it goes 0, 0, 45, 45, 53, and 120. Okay, so it's edited them 2 pieces of data. We can use all the different symbols up here that we have done. We can change, we can edit, we can go -3, change it to that, we can go whatever we wanted to in this set. Okay, if we want to delete the data, we could go players, brackets, and then colon, close brackets, and then inside the brackets, I think we just put 2 there. Instead of doing it, we just leave it blank. So instead of putting 0, 0, if we leave it blank like that, it gets rid of it. So I didn't put equals, that's why. So inside here, equals 0. So we're saying players from the start to slot 2, and now I want you to equal nothing. So press enter, and now if we run this, that bits of data has gone completely. So we've got 45, 45, 53, 120. If we want to delete all the data completely, so we're finished with this list, if we go players, then we run all of the data, which is just that symbol, or the colon, and then if we equal it to nothing, if we press enter, and now if we run players, there is no players list. Okay, so that's kind of how lists work. We can access it in different ways, and we're going to use it in different ways. We can use it for randomizations and different typing elements to allow us, different inputs to allow us to go different branches, and there's different things we can do with it, but these are the main topics that we're going to need as we go along, the main fundamentals we're going to need as we go along within the text-based adventure game. So we've got some maths operators there, we've got how we print a screen, we've got looking at accessing data within a string, we've got looking at accessing data within a proper list, so using numbers and that sort of stuff. Okay, so these are the elements that you're going to need for the text-based adventure game. within the next video, we're going to start to look at the text-based adventure game, and we're going to start to look at how we're going to incorporate this, and we're going to start to build it and apply some of the knowledge we've got now into building that game, and hopefully it should be good fun. Thanks for listening.